Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa. Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing on this wonderful Wednesday? This is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com, broadcasting live from downtown Northport, a couple miles away from Bryant-Denny Stadium. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter at Joe Gaither6, at BamaCentral.com, at BamaCentral on the X machine, and at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated right there on Facebook. We appreciate everybody who's liked, reviewed, subscribed, rated the show, comment, send me your questions, your queries, and complaints right there at Joe Gaither 6 as we are rolling along. Alabama's week number 11. Week number 12 in college football, 11 for Alabama football, getting rolling this week. We took a little off day yesterday, enjoyed that, watching Alabama basketball. They defeated South Alabama 102-46 to move to 3-0. So we're going to have a little bit of fun talking about Alabama's basketball's game last night. We're going to set up a little bit of conversation on Alabama's opponent this weekend against UTC. Should be a cakewalk, a snooze fest in Bryant-Denny Stadium to celebrate the end of the home schedule this year in Bryant-Denny Stadium. So we will talk about that here in just a little bit. But it is Tuesday. We're going to be welcoming on our friend Sutton Smith. Joins us, the digital reporter for WVUA23. Sutton and I have gotten to know each other a little bit, watching all the high school football games this year, and we talked some ball throughout the season. So excited to bring on Sutton Smith. You can find him at Sutton Smith 33 on the X machine, and we're going to talk college football playoff. The new rankings got dropped last night. Alabama football, a little bit of Jalen Milroe, how he's progressed throughout the year, and a little Alabama basketball since they are in vogue in style, winning again last night. Sutton, how is your Wednesday going? Thanks for your time today, sir.
Doing great, man. I appreciate you for having me on, and yeah, it's been great getting to know you, getting to talk some ball this fall. It's always fun. And then I just got to ask you, what's your favorite song to play on that piano in the back you got there?
Hot Cross Buns is all I have. It makes it nice and simple. Makes you seem like you're a professional when you're absolutely an amateur.
I'm sure your guests at your house love that when you play that for them when they walk in the door.
Can you play anything? You want to come over? I'll hire you out if I ever get a date. You just wear a nice tux and play something for an hour or two.
Yeah, I'm not musically inclined, but hey, maybe I can learn a thing or two from Joe Gaither 6. I don't know.
Oh, well, we like to have fun musically when we can, but I wouldn't say my talent is extremely high. Sutton, what'd you do last night? I spent my time watching Alabama basketball, 102-46 over South Alabama. Third straight output in 3 games for Alabama basketball, going over 100 points. But Coach Nado's walked in after the game talking defense last night. What have you made of the early outputs, the early outings of this year's Alabama basketball squad?
Well, I've done the same thing as you. I've been able, fortunately, to watch this team play 3 games now. And I've come away from I think this team is deeper than they were last year. Now, obviously, you don't have the star talent you had with Brandon Miller. Grant Nelson is the star of this team, but we all know Brandon Miller was just on a different level last season. So you don't have that one guy you can look to. Maybe he'll score, 40 points a game against South Carolina like he did last season and really just answered the bell in that way. You don't have that guy on this team, but to me, you've got a lot more quality up and down the roster. When you got guys like Davin Cosby who aren't seeing a lot of minutes play, Latrell Wrightsell, those type of guys. Chris Parker is probably going to redshirt this year. He may not even play. On last year's team, Parker probably would have played. We just didn't have as much depth as we do this year, and I think it's a lot more quality as well. Especially, I love seeing that big man rotation last night with Diabate and Nelson and Pringle. Strada running the point. That was fun to watch. A lot. It's just a different type of basketball team than last year, and something that it just shows you how good of a coach Nate Oates is. He can really win with any style team he throws out there.
Oh, yeah, and I think you talk about it. What I want to get to right here is Nate Oates, his quality. People, you see the end of the year last year. Oh, you lost in Sweet 16, disappointing finish to a great year. You lost a number 2 overall NBA draft pick, and you lost Nick Pringle, who went in the 20s, right, to the Nets. And so you hit transfer portal. You saw guys transfer out as well, and major transition on the coaching staff. People said, "Oh, there's no way Alabama basketball can be as competitive as it was last year." Now they're preseason pick 5th. But yeah, okay, you played 3 games against inferior competition. You got to at least put that into context. You're not going to be seeing Morehead State, Indiana State, or South Alabama in conference play, or really head-to-head in NCAA tournament play. But do you think, is there any way this team might be as good or better than last year's team?
Well, we've seen teams in the past too, these Cinderella story teams, and these teams who get hot at the right time. I think that's what all college basketball is about. Same thing can be said with baseball. It depends on when you get hot and what time of the year that's going to be. So can this team get hot around NCAA tournament time? Of course they can. I mean, last year's team was just so good. I still think the best team in college basketball last year was our team. Just weren't hot at the right moment and ran into a San Diego roster that was. And sometimes that's just kind of what it comes down to. Same can be said in baseball. I mean, the Atlanta Braves are the best team in baseball this year, I think, hands down. They just rolled right into Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, we know how that is. We don't have to get into that. But I think this team can go deeper for sure. Just speaking about the quality of the team we were just talking about, yes, they can. Without Brandon Miller, it's going to be tough, because you last year you just relied so much on him. But yeah, Nate Oates, I mean, with the turnover of the staff, with the turnover of the roster, I mean, you only have 3 guys return to this team that were on the team last year, all 3 guys starting. And the fact that you get more quality players throughout recruiting and then through the transfer portal, I think it's one of the better coaching jobs in college basketball. And I think by the end of the year, everyone will see that and everyone will recognize that. And one more thing before we move on about Nate Oates is just when you're talking to guys who I've heard in articles mentioned several times in the NBA, they think he's one of the most aspiring coaches to be an NBA coach. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen. But, I mean, he's getting talked about in circles in the NBA. I mean, that just goes to show you how good of an X's and O's guy he is, offensively. And then, obviously, being able to put a good staff and roster around him.
It's been incredible to watch year in and year out. Really took Coach Johnson's players and kind of built upon that. And since then, it's been the Nate Oates year in, year out project of what's the team going to look like. And every year when they roll out the first game, they're like, oh, this team might be pretty good. And this year team, no different. Putting it together on the defensive end last night, holding South Alabama to 697 points per possession last night. Been a point of emphasis for the first couple of games. Coach talking about the defense hasn't been that good. South last night helped Alabama by missing a lot of shots, but the defensive intensity was much better. Still a little early. Alabama's going to take on Mercer this coming up Friday night in Coleman Coliseum before embarking on a Thanksgiving exhibition. Do you take a lot away from the first four games? I mean, obviously Mercer's yet to have been played, but do you take a lot away because you're going to get much better competition? Ohio State next week, and you'll either play Iona, or Oregon in the next game, and then you've got the first week of December you're playing Purdue, Arizona, and Creighton. So the competition jumps way up. But do you take anything away from the first couple of games?
I mean, I definitely take away the scoring and, being able to consistently do that, because no matter what, you're going up against guys who are, D1 guys. They're tough. South Alabama was pretty solid last year. I mean, they even held us. I think we only beat them last year by 10 points, and last night just splattered them. So definitely you got to take away something. But when you're going up against the competition that we'll be seeing in the future, like Purdue, that's obviously one that comes to mind up in Canada. Just how are you going to attack a lot of, star players like Zach Edey? I mean, last year might have been a little bit easier with Bediako last year. Now that Pringle's the guy at center, how do you attack guys like that? I mean, how do you stack up against the Dukes, the Purdues, and teams like that, especially the SEC this year? Going to be a very good conference in basketball. Tennessee looks good. Obviously, we know what Arkansas is going to do. I think A&M's a lot underrated. So Auburn's underrated as much as we don't want to say it. I don't know about you, Joe, and maybe you can answer this question too, but I mean, I definitely take a little bit into consideration, but once I see Alabama really stack up against the big teams, that's what I really want to see. And I think that's what everyone wants to see just from any team in college.
I take it as a good start, as a good step, right, as a good sign of what might be to come. But I mean, you're going to roll out and beat these 3 teams. Without really even putting forth a whole lot of effort. But to get to 100 points in the first 3 nights shows pretty good cohesion offensively to respond to the coaching points that coaches kind of already laid out there of defensive intensity, starting quickly, not laying off in the second half, things that have played this team in the preseason against Wake Forest and TCU. I think you are appreciative of, okay, some of the coaching points are at least being received. But next week's going to be more important. Ohio State next week will be a pretty nice little indicator of how really this team will play it when they're playing against guys 1 through 6, 1 through 7 that are probably much closer to their talent level. Unfortunately, no disrespect to the first 3 teams, but going to be a lot different talent level. I mean, we watched Kentucky take Kansas to the wire last night, number 1 team in the country, and Kentucky wasn't even with some of their big players. So it's going to be a tough year in the SEC. I'm interested to see how it continues.
It's still early. It's still early. It's kind of just with football. Alabama football, it took them a minute to find their way. Some teams like Kansas, it's going to take them a minute to find their way, So that's the beauty of sports, right? But I will say one takeaway that I've loved seeing so far from this basketball team is turnovers. A lot less in the turnovers than we saw last year. Obviously, Nelson had a tough night last night, but that's a promising sign. I think that's one that, as an Alabama fan, in the previous 3 or 4 years of the Oates era, one that we could have done away with a lot more. So.
Yeah, only 10 turnovers last night, and you see the veteran leadership with Mark Sears in his second year and now being at 4th year in college. So he's seen it all at this point. I'm cautiously optimistic about what this team's going to end up being. But I like the early start.
Me too. Yeah. Hopefully, maybe we'll make it back to same position we were in last year, and then that's just the thing. Can you get further? Then 04 is the only one that's gone further. And I think if any coach is going to be able to do it, I think Oates is the guy. So
yeah, but I'm pretty happy with double SEC championships. 4 in the last 4 in the last 6 titles have been Alabama's, so I'm pretty happy with that.
And love getting picked 5th to finish in the SEC as well. Love that.
Coach poking a lot of fun, and it seems like it may not be a 5th place squad, but the top of the league, golly, you already put it out there. A&M's going to be really good. I was impressed with Kentucky last night. I think that this league, it's not quite like football. It's not quite like baseball is, but I think the top of the league is very, very strong.
Yeah, the Vols to me are the team to watch out for. I mean, they as much as I hate to say it, but to me they
old and experienced.
Very experienced, a lot of talent, great head coach. Yeah, they're the team to me. That's kryptonite in the side of Alabama in the past few years as well.
It certainly has been. We're talking to Sutton Smith, digital reporter for WVUA23 right here in Tuscaloosa, and you can find him at Sutton Smith 33 on the Twitter/X machine. We've been talking Alabama basketball, winning last night over South Alabama 102-46, going 3-0 on the early season. Going to be playing Mercer on Friday at 7 p.m. You can follow us at BamaCentral for all the coverage of Alabama basketball. Press conference tomorrow at noon, so we'll be involved with that at BamaCentral. Let's flip to football, as really football is in the business end of the year. Alabama football still ranked number 8 in the new college football playoff poll, has been 8th in all 3 playoff polls. The only movement last night, Georgia bumping from 2 to number 1. Now, I think that's a good thing for Alabama, but how concerned are you, Sutton Smith? The no movement, no respect for the Alabama season. Oregon, Texas, I mean, okay, you know why Texas is ahead of you, but Oregon, I don't know. What do you make of the latest edition of the college football playoff poll? Alabama still at 8th. Georgia at 1, Georgia, Ohio State 2, and then your next 3 are Michigan and Florida State. So that rounds out your top 4. Are you getting a little nervous that Alabama might get left out of this thing?
I think if Alabama takes care of business, wins the SEC championship, obviously got to pass a hurdle before that, though, in Auburn. I mean, I've talked on my podcast all year, that place just has voodoo magic, You never know what happens when a team from Tuscaloosa steps in to play at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So that game, to me, obviously, Coach Saban says we don't want to look over UTC, so we'll give them our due. We'll give them their due diligence of information here coming up soon. But that's the game. That's the game.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, that's the game for me though. That Auburn game, then we can worry about Georgia. But I think if Alabama beats Georgia, everything else will take care of itself. Obviously Florida State still got to play Florida, and they got to win the ACC championship game. They're a team to me. If they lose a game, they're out. Like regardless, even if they lose the ACC championship game to a 10-2 North Carolina team, I still would put them out just because their strength of schedule, strength of record isn't as good. Obviously, to me, the most perplexing thing is Oregon. Their best win is against a USC team they beat last week by 9 points. And yeah, they were in control the whole time. And sure, they beat the former Heisman Trophy. But to me, actually, their best performance of the year was a game they lost in to the Washington Huskies. I mean, a game I think if they replayed that today, Oregon probably wins in. But Alabama's strength of schedule, strength of record, opponents they played, all that good stuff is a lot better than the Oregon resume. So I don't know if the committee is just basing the ranking them ahead of Alabama on, their look at them, thinking they're a better team on the field, on paper, whatever that is, without taking a look at strength of record or strength of schedule. Maybe that's what they're thinking. But, I'm not too nervous because first off, Alabama's got to do a lot of things right to even be in that conversation. And second, I think something will take care of itself. Whether that's and one of them that I really am looking at is Iowa State and Texas this upcoming weekend. Obviously, tough performance for Texas last time out, winning by 3. Could Iowa State pull off something they pulled off a few years ago? I don't know. I think it's a possibility. And then obviously Kansas State wants another shot at them. They and possibly in the Big 12 championship game. So it's not going to be an easy road for Texas either going up to that point. So I think if Alabama takes care of business, everything else will just, the path will clear the way for Alabama. But first, they got to win their games. So I think they need to be focused more, on that than just, is there going to be a path for us? But yeah, it's definitely there may not be.
All right, let me put my tinfoil hat on real quick, Sutton, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. How much of the Oregon ranking? Oregon sitting there at what, 5-6 in the college football playoff poll? Yeah, 6, right ahead of Texas, right behind Washington. How much of the Oregon ranking at 6 is due to or credited to the killer social media team the Oregon Ducks have on their football program? Not only, all right, the results are nice, but how much is the Oregon hype video around the Colorado game? Because Colorado was at an all-time, it was white-hot heat as far for college football at that time. They went into Oregon and lost 42-6. And then not only did they lose 42-6, but hours after the game, the Oregon social media team put on one of the best 5-minute videos, really hyping up the game and hyping up the performance. They kind of showed Colorado showing their rear ends, and then they showed Dan Lanning showing his own, not really showing his own rear end, but coaching his team really on the edge of what may or may not be acceptable. I don't have an issue with it. What goes on in the locker room, I think, is pretty much fair game. Yeah, you can get involved in all the isms if you want to, but I think inside the locker room is pretty fair game. But I give the Oregon social media video team a lot of credit for, hey, we have this moment against one of the hottest teams in college football or not, whether they were good or not was really subject to for debate. But Oregon beat the brakes off of them. They beat the brakes off of them. They invited Deion Sanders, you're so hot, we're going to put you guys through a table, and did that. And then they put out the video that said, this was our behind the scenes look. And ever since then, it's been like, Dan Lanning, he's the next name to come replace Nick Saban. Dan Lanning, watch out for him to go to Texas A&M. Dan Lanning, Bo Nix, he's got Bo Nix playing at an all-world level. Is it just the Oregon hype machine that has kept them? I mean, they're good. They're a good football team. Absolutely. You put them on the field against Alabama, you're going to have probably a good game. But is it more so to do with Oregon's schedule, who they've beaten, or is it more so to do with, they got killer uniforms, they've got a social media team right behind them, we like their story, they're a lot of fun, and they're kind of the new kid on the block?
Well, first off, I think they started off the year, the social media team, with the bodacious Heisman campaign. They started off the year on a pretty good foot, and I think those people have made some money for themselves. I think that's – but then when we talk about Deion, it was obviously the hype train going into the season for them was insane. So pulling off a win right there, and I watch a lot of Josh Pate. I'm a Josh Pate guy. He likes to talk about the college football casuals, and I think there are a lot of them out there. And a lot of them, when they saw that final score from Oregon, Colorado, they were amazed. They're like, wow, this team is, really really good. And I think we probably got some casuals on that playoff committee, if I'm just saying. But, obviously Oregon took care of business, and they took care of business bad in that game. Oh, how the mighty have fallen with Deion Sanders. I mean, from that point on, I think they've lost, 6 in a row? So, whether that set off a chain reaction for the Colorado team or not, that's just dependent on whatever you think. But I really do believe people buy into that game a little bit too much. Obviously, it was a huge win at the time, but looking back on it now, it's not a very impressive. And I think one of the things about Oregon is obviously their biggest win is USC, but every other team they've beaten this season, I don't think they have a winning record. I think I saw that stat somewhere. Obviously, going to have to make sure that one's correct, but I saw that stat the other day, and it really perplexed me. Just why are they ranked ahead of Alabama? And I think one thing you can look at maybe is the Texas performance and the USF performance, USF in particular. That to me was a worse performance even than the Texas loss. And I think it's hard to have like 2 games in a season and to get that just bad taste out of the mouth of people, because I think they're thinking, well, maybe this will happen again when Alabama plays, a better opponent. But to me, Alabama just continued to stack opponents on top of one another. I mean, you had A&M, Tennessee, LSU all in a row. Kentucky's not a bad football team. Ole Miss was right after the USF game, and Alabama showed up and showed out in that game. To me, I don't know. Alabama's strength of schedule, strength of record is better than most. I think it's better than Washington. I think it's better than Oregon. I think it's better than a few teams that are in front of Alabama. But I think people just can't get that early season taste out of their mouth. And, sometimes that happens. But, hey, let me just tell you, if Alabama beats the number 1 Georgia team in the SEC championship game, I think that could remedy everything. So who knows? But yeah, I definitely think Oregon's a good football team. Been able to watch them a few times this year. To me, the most complete team in the Pac-12. You're talking about defense. You're talking about the ability to run the ball. You're talking about quarterback. Obviously, Bo Nix looks great. But I've said this kind of all season. For me, and just a quick little Oregon scouting report, Bucky Irving is what makes them go. Their running back can do it all. Just watching him, his ability to run the ball, to catch the ball, to pass pro, he does it all for that offense. And he really reminds me of an SEC style running back, an Alvin Kamara type guy, just watching him play. So not to say Alabama to me is a better team, the better resume, but I can understand why Oregon's ahead of them. Don't think it should happen, but they're a good team. They're no slouch. That's for sure. They're no slouch.
I didn't want to issue any disrespect for the Ducks, but I feel like there's a lot of hype around the Colorado weekend, and really you haven't left that. You lost to Washington by 3 points, and it didn't even like affect them on the rankings, which is fine. Washington's a good team, and that game came down to the wire, but it was basically like we're all still living in this post-Colorado glow where you beat the brakes off of a fun team, but maybe not so much of a quality team. And so I think a lot of people are holding on to that like, well, just wait till they do it again. Let me ask you, going back to your South Florida performance and then the Georgia comment that you just made. All right, so the South Florida performance, I'm with you. It lingers in a lot of people's minds. But circling back to your casuals conversation, if you just look at the final score, what was it, 17-7? Not good. Yes. Not good. But watch the game again. Go watch the game again and see what, try to understand what Nick Saban was trying to accomplish. I felt like it was more a message to the whole team and the fan base, and really just, hey, let's figure out all the kinks. We're going to throw out Buckner. We're going to throw out Simpson. We're going to let everybody see these guys and see how the offense operates. Now, people forget Jermaine Burton dropped a 35, 40-yard touchdown pass that would have kind of broken the game open. But watch the whole game. Realize the coaches kind of the purpose for that game and what it did for the rest of the year. It basically, you came out on Monday and coach said, Jalen Milroe is our guy. There's no more competition. We're going to figure this out with Jalen Milroe. And from there, boom, 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 boom. You've had just immense growth from the offensive end. The defense has been solid all year long. So you see the South Florida game, you see, you didn't cover, but you've really had great defense all year. And the South Florida game was really kind of trying to serve a purpose, at least for organizationally speaking, serve a purpose to, hey, everybody shut up about the backup quarterbacks. Hey, everybody, this is the offense we can run or we cannot run. I don't know. I think that you got to kind of wrap it all up. The committee has to has to look inside that South Florida game and not just see the box score at the end of the game. And then to go back to the Georgia comment, if Alabama beats Georgia, number 1 overall Georgia, you're going to have a lot of Georgia fans saying we should still be in the playoff too. We should still be in the playoff. We're 12-1. We've been undefeated for a handful of years now, and back-to-back national champions. Is that going to do enough to jump Alabama from the 7-8 range to the 3-4 range? And do you see Georgia even dropping out if that's what happens? Because I think the margins of error, going to your Florida State comment, if you lose, like the margins of errors for this year's team, especially with how many strong teams you have, I'm sorry, is it harsh for Georgia to be out of the college football playoff if you lose to Alabama in the SEC championship? Yes, it is harsh, but I think that's what we're dealing with at this point. Everybody's playing elimination games every single week right at this point. And whether it's Florida State playing Florida or whether it's Georgia playing Georgia Tech in 2 weeks, you got to win your games. I think Georgia should be and would be eliminated with an Alabama victory in an SEC championship game.
Yeah, let me circle back to your USF take. And then this may make some Alabama fans mad. This is just how I saw. Yes, you mentioned the Jermaine Burton 35-yard drop, or really he was just underran it, I think, a little bit. I did not think Buckner played awful. I was not in the camp that I thought Buckner was just terrible in that game. Sure, he missed some throws, but I think the main message that we got from that game was the offense that Simpson or Buckner is going to run is not one sustainable or suitable to this Alabama team. Obviously, the O-line has made some long strides this year, and at that point in the season, man, it was rough to watch, right? Especially, I predicted them to win like the Joe Moore Award this year before the season. That's how I was buying into the Tyler Booker hype that he had been spitting all offseason, and it obviously did not turn out to be like that. So yeah, I'll kind of start that off. But obviously, Milroe has really masked a lot of the stuff on offense that is not good for Alabama. And his escapability in the pocket, his newer presence in the pocket has really helped out this offense a lot, I think. And obviously, he was the right guy to do it. Now, circle back to your Georgia talk. I do think it depends on the score, right? I mean, we talked about, let's say if Alabama beats the brakes off of Georgia, obviously I do not think that's going to happen. It's not going to happen. They would not be in the playoff conversation if that was the case. But this game's going to be a close game. If Alabama wins, it's probably going to be a single digit win, right? It's going to take a lot because conference championships matter, and previous players in the playoff have usually won conference championships. I'm trying to think back. Alabama 2017, I think, was the first team who didn't win their conference championship to make it into the playoff. And I only think that's happened a couple other times. Obviously, Georgia in 2021, they lost to Alabama, but were undefeated. And prior to that game, they got in. So it's really only happened to SEC teams, right? So I think Georgia's got a better chance than any other team does in the conference, especially or in college football, especially with their winning 2 titles in a row. But this year, to me, is different because this year you have a lot more skill and talent across the college football landscape in conferences and different conferences. So to me, the two conferences, if you kind of look conference to conference, the two conferences at the most risk of being left out is the Big 12 and the ACC. Obviously, the ACC is riding on Florida State at this point, and the Big 12 is kind of riding on Texas. So those two conferences, and really the Big 12, I mean, obviously Texas leaving. I don't think they could care less if Texas made it or not because they're kind of, pissed off at Texas right now.
Yes.
But the ACC, man, they're really hoping Florida State can represent them because they haven't been represented since the last time Clemson did in 2021 when Clemson lost in the semifinals. So, those two conferences can really be left out. But I think regardless, the Big Ten is going to be in the playoff for sure. And I think the Pac-12 is definitely going to get a team in the playoff. It's hard for me to see Oregon losing again or Washington losing twice, whichever scenario you want to pick there. So I think the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are definite locks. They're going to get 2 spots at least. So depending on what Florida State and Texas do, and then obviously if Georgia wins, they're in, obviously. But if Alabama wins, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier, it's gonna take something to happen. I mean, Florida State's gonna have to lose. Texas is gonna have to lose. I think, in my opinion. Now, do I think that should be the case? Obviously not. But just from what the playoff committee has told us so far. So no, I think if Georgia does lose this game, I don't think they're in, regardless of the situation, because I believe that there's enough talent and opportunities to go around college football thanks to the transfer portal and NIL. I think that's a big reason why we're starting to see a lot of leveling out in college football. So, yeah, in previous years, probably Georgia would have made it again. They're good enough to, for sure. But I don't know. With this year, conference championships mean a lot, man.
How quickly has the landscape really changed? Because you're talking only 2 years ago where Georgia loses to Alabama 41-24 in the SEC championship game. That's a 17-point loss, and they still got in as the 4 seed. Alabama ended with Cincinnati and Georgia, whoever they have, Michigan, right? And then you end up with a rematch, obviously going Georgia's way. But like in 2 quick years, you can't go undefeated and lose the conference championship game because not everybody, but you got a legitimate contender 1 through 5, 1 through 8 or so. Really, how quickly I think the landscape's change has been fascinating. Because I was in the full-on four playoff teams. You don't have enough teams to go to 8 or 12. You don't have enough teams. And shoot, this year you really wish you had a 12-team playoff because that's how quickly the landscape has changed.
Yeah. And I was a BCS proponent. I like that model the most of anything. I'm an old school type of guy. So, yeah, I like that. But I think an Exhibit A you can look at. I mean, think about the Pac-12 a couple years ago. Washington wasn't – I mean, they were a player back in 2016 when they faced Alabama. They weren't a player 2 years ago. Oregon, not much of a player 2 years ago. USC was in a completely different situation 2 years ago than they're in now. So, especially with Clay Helton being there at the helm rather than Lincoln Riley. So, yeah, I think the Pac-12 is an Exhibit A. And now they've got they had 4 or 5 teams at the beginning of the season that potentially could have made it in. And now they've got 2 big front runners. And like I said, I think their conference is a lock to make it. So I think the Pac-12 is just looking at them and the way that they're playing football now, they've gotten a lot better. And a lot of that has been due to transfer portal and NIL. You know, Penix was at Indiana a couple years ago. Now he's a Heisman frontrunner at Washington. Bo Nix, we know him well at Alabama. He was at Auburn. Never would have thought he'd be the quarterback he is now. So those 2 teams and then that conference in general is an Exhibit A of why college football is so much different than it is now due to NIL and the transfer portal.
Well, it's only going to continue in this fashion, and I'm really, really just enjoying what college football has become over the last couple of years. I was very bored with college football, even with an Alabama perspective. Oh, man, Alabama going to roll out and win by 40, win by 50. No, this year has been so much fun. Alabama has won most of its games, but golly, it's been so much fun. The uncertainty makes it so much more fun when you walk into Bryant-Denny Stadium thinking, I don't know, is LSU, is Texas, is Tennessee going to create some problems today? The uncertainty makes it so much more fun for me. And with that uncertainty, I'll move to this. We've been talking to Sutton Smith of WVUA23 digital reporter right there on the sports side. Check him out at WVUA23. What about the uncertainty at quarterback? You walked into the year not knowing who's going to be the quarterback. I think you had a huge contingent thinking Ty Simpson's going to be the guy. Simpson's going to take the job. Well, you had a huge contingent of Milroe, and then you had a few Buckner lovers, and you had the freshmen we love, Lonigan and Holstein. But you've seen Jalen Milroe go from, oh my gosh, he cannot play quarterback in the SEC last year against A&M, 3 turnovers, what in the world, to is he a top 3 quarterback in this league? You're not going to put him over Jaden Daniels. You probably aren't going to put him over Carson Beck right now. But goodness, just thinking out loud, as I said, is he 3, 4, right there, top 5 quarterback in this league? Talk about just the progression and the development that you've seen out of Jalen Milroe.
Well, to me, at the beginning of the season, you got to go back to before the season started, kind of spring practice. I felt like this was like a presidential race, right? Everybody had a party or side that they were in. And obviously, I heard a lot about Ty Simpson. But to me, last year, one of the things that I found very interesting is when the goings got tough in the A&M game, Milroe was the one that they stuck with. They didn't want to put in Simpson in that game. Even in the Sugar Bowl, the Sugar Bowl last year when Bryce Young got benched, I even had the pregame depth chart, had Simpson or Jalen Milroe, and we hadn't seen that all season. But guess who went in after Bryce Young was benched? Jalen Milroe. And I think that told me a lot of things. So I was more in the Jalen Milroe camp this offseason. And a particular reason why, it was because of that skill set that we now all have seen and love. That skill set of being able to get outside of the pocket, step up in the pocket, make a huge downfield throw when he can. His legs. He's like a running back playing quarterback with the ability to throw the football. And obviously we all had our concerns preseason. You know, decision making was crucial against Texas A&M. Bad decision making. The intermediate ball, I think, was the one that I needed to see the most improvement from. And then just in terms of looking off safeties and making progressional throws, we have seen that develop and then some this year. To me, he's the most developed player at the position in college football all season. I mean, going from getting benched against USF to now being 6th in the Heisman race. Don't know if I've ever seen that before in college football. So I don't think he has a chance to win the Heisman, by the way. But, he definitely has just, absolutely turned it on. He's been a lifesaver. I mean, think about what this team is without him. If Ty Simpson is the starter, let's just say Milroe does not exist. He's not on this team. This Alabama team is sitting at what, 10-1 right now, or 9-1 right now?
9-1. What would they be? Let's just play.
I think 6-3, maybe at best. I don't think we win A&M. I don't think we beat A&M. Yeah. I don't think we beat Tennessee. LSU. LSU I think we would have won. LSU, dude. LSU's defense is so bad. I mean that I think, and bad is an understatement for LSU's defense. That's how awful they are. But I mean, realistically, you're looking at maybe only 5 or 6 wins this season. I mean, without Milroe. So he, to me, is the unsung hero of this team. Obviously, when you look at
you into losing the Ole Miss game the week after USF.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, dude. I mean, literally, you're looking at a completely different season, man. I mean, really are. And that's just how important he has been to this team. I mean, he is a difference maker. And I expect nothing less from him the rest of the year. And I mean, next year he might play himself into being an NFL quarterback, Joe. I mean, really, he really could. He really could. He's been that good and he's progressed that much. That's
what the interesting divulsion of this conversation becomes, because so many people have got their pens out and they say, spring. I mean, what, 1 month from now, Julian Sayin is enrolling at the University of Alabama. He's going to be participating in bowl practice. We talked to him on the Joe Gaither show 2 weeks ago. You can check that conversation out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. He told us, I'm coming. Graduation's already in place. He should be here second week of December or so. And people have got their pens out saying, well, he's coming, 5-star quarterback, California kid, pin him in as the starting quarterback. And look, I love Julian Sayin. I've appreciated getting to know him over the last 6 months. His film looks really nice. His film looks cool. They're undefeated. Carlsbad Lancers have a killer offense. I'm not writing Julian Sayin in pen. I mean, sure, I think he will be a factor. I think he'll be a factor. But daggum, to me, it's Jalen Milroe's team until he says I'm hitting the transfer portal or I'm going to the draft.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it'll continue to be that way. I mean, I think you can go ahead and put Jalen Milroe's name in pen next year as a starting quarterback, in my opinion. And I think another guy you got to look at is, and yes, Julian Sayin's great, but what's going to happen with Ty Simpson? Is he going to leave? You don't know. And I think if Ty were to stay, I mean, I think he still retains that number 2 position at on the depth chart at quarterback. And then are you disrespecting a guy like Dylan Lonergan? I mean, got a lot of hype preseason, liked what I've seen from him in the spring game. I mean, in the spring game alone, he took that 4-string defense right down the field. I mean, looked like they were playing against, like, just operating an NFL offense when he was in there. So I think you got to put some, and I'm not saying you aren't, I'm just saying Alabama fans in general, they don't need to overlook Ty Simpson or Dylan Lonergan. Those guys were highly recruited, sought after players, obviously, that have gotten a lot of hype in the last few years. We haven't really seen much of it on the field, but I think those guys are definitely players, and I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them go ahead of Sayin on the depth chart next year. But no, I'm very confident, unless Milroe, because he won't hit transfer portal, unless Milroe decides to go to the draft. Yeah, unless he decides to go to the draft this year, which I do not think could happen. You can go ahead and put him in pen. He'll be the starter next year. I still think he'd give us the best chance to win. It's really hard to be a freshman starting quarterback in the SEC, especially with the schedule Alabama's playing next year, with the extended SEC, Texas and Oklahoma joining. I mean, think about it. Saban's only ever started one freshman at Alabama, and that dude right now is quarterback in the Philadelphia Eagles. So you got to be different. And I'm not saying Julian isn't. Bryce Young didn't start as a freshman. I mean, and he probably was the best quarterback in Alabama history, at least so in my opinion. So I think Milroe's your guy, really, until he's gone.
Yeah, it's going to be look, I love what you see out of Milroe. People want to say, oh, he should move quarterback, move positions, X, Y, Z. He's only got the deep ball, ABC, whatever the case may be. I think the way that he's utilized his legs the last 2 or 3 weeks has I mean, it opens things up in the passing game that people don't really understand. It gives you a lot of one-on-one opportunities down the field. And he has just blossomed, in my opinion. I mean, you do have some bad decisions, but even last week against Kentucky, he throws against his body back into the middle of the defense and throws an interception. The very next drive, he comes back out there and is in this same exact position, rolled off to the right, looking back towards the middle of the field and says, no, I'm going to throw it out of bounds and we're going to punt instead. Just little things like that show me that his growth is just, he's still stacking experience. And I mean, yeah, Julian Sand looks fun and looks like he can throw the ball all over the field, but I think we're going to be in for year number 2 of Jalen Milroe, and that should excite everybody just as much.
In-game adjustments too. I think that's been the undersold point of the season. I mean, Tommy Rees, an unsung hero. I mean, Bill O'Brien in this offensive coordinator position in general has gotten a lot of scrutiny in the past couple of years. And Tommy Rees has really completely fixed that offense to really support Jalen Milroe and his skill set. And I don't think enough people are talking about it. I mean, what a job he's done since the bye week. Obviously, Saban kind of talked about earlier in the year that we're running more of a Bryce Young style offense when we play Texas. And obviously that's not exactly what's going to work for Alabama. Now, Jalen Milroe's abilities, getting him outside of the pocket, a lot of RPOs, a lot of just straight up speed options, those type of plays, the deep ball, I mean, those type of plays are being utilized. We didn't see that at the beginning of the year. We saw a lot of three-step drops, 5-step drops, trying to make him go through progressions too much. I think that's unrealistic to ask for of him. And what they're doing now, I mean, we've seen it. Looks a lot better. Alabama is, to me, the hottest team in the country and the most dangerous team in the country right now. I mean, you can look at a team like, to me, one of the hottest teams in the country is Arizona. Yeah. But they don't have the talent to go up against an Alabama team. They've been on fire. But Alabama, and just in terms of completely shifting their philosophy on offense this year, to do that in season, to do that at halftime of some games, I mean, just shows the coaching that Tommy Rees has put together, and then Nick Saban too, being able to trust a 31-year-old with his offense.
All right, so we are still playing a game this weekend. Alabama's taking on UTC at 11 a.m. on SEC Network Plus. So if you watched the basketball game last night on your SEC Network Plus, the football game will be in the exact same place. You won't be able to see it on regular cable. That's because Alabama is playing the Little Sisters of the Poor. No disrespect. I am from Chattanooga. I have several UT Mocs graduates in my family, and we say throw up the C for my family friends. But look, let's just hear, Sutton, we're not going to do a breakdown of this game because UTC, they stink. My question to you is, okay, they don't stink. Listen to Coach Saban.
You're doing Rusty Wright a disservice.
They've got a good offense. They've got a good defense. They're second in their conference. It's going to be a real big challenge for Alabama. That's the Nick Saban line, and that's what he's been giving us. But we operate in reality, Sutton. We don't operate in this Nick Saban fantasy land. K. Caruth can play quarterback this week, and Alabama can win. So what in the world is the point? What's the point to this game still being on Alabama's schedules? Get these daggum cupcakes off our schedules. Coach Saban talked about it today on the SEC teleconference. I've had a really hard time getting teams up for the 11th game of the season, but that game before the Auburn game. Well, maybe if you didn't play Montana State Technical College every single year on this November weekend, people would show up. You're going to have a very family-friendly environment in Bryant-Denny Stadium this weekend. Tickets will be given away for free in many places. We'll put you on that here at BamaCentral.com. If you need some tickets, we can get you connected, I'm sure, to some people. So, Sutton, what the hell is the point? What are we doing this weekend? Why are we playing this game? And what can Alabama really gain from this game?
Well, first off, for me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, I really look forward to this game every season. I mean, the guys that are in depth and really trying to understand what we have behind the curtain, maybe behind what's behind these starters. I want to see more of, what does Ty Simpson look like? What does Dylan Lonergan look like? Richard Young, a guy we hadn't seen much of this year. You're going to see a lot of guys who aren't playing this year as much, but are going to factor into 2024 and 2025. Those guys are going to get a lot of opportunities. And maybe your casual college football fan doesn't like it. And sure, I would much rather have a 9th SEC game in this position than to play UTC or someone of the liking. We played Western Carolina many times over the past few years. But I really enjoy Bears. Yeah. But I really enjoy getting to see some of these backups get some time,
So can we just start them? Coach Saban, Coach Smith, can we just start them? Start Ty Simpson, start Richard Young, and start Justice Haynes, start Kobe Prentice and Jalen Hale, give Jermaine Burton the day off, and let's just start them.
Why not? Why not? But hey, I do think I'll tell you this. If I see a lot of speed options from Jalen Milroe this weekend, I'm pretty pissed off. I am pretty pissed off. I want him to just sit in the pocket for, just tear him up for a half and then get the heck out of there, because we cannot be risking any injury from him. Our season would be done for. But yes, you're exactly right. I'm looking forward to seeing Ty Simpson kind of just pick apart a team that, he's supposed to, right? Thought he played well, managed it well when he was in against South Florida. So I want to continue to see that
weekend.
Yeah, and then and for a guy like Ty Simpson, who may be going into the transfer portal, we don't know. Obviously, we don't know that yet. But this will be a game for him to put on tape, right? He doesn't have many in his career, so I'm sure he and some other guys like that are really looking forward to that, and the kind of the new day and age of college football. So I really look forward to this game. Obviously, it's not as fun as like an LSU or a Tennessee, but in terms of just getting to know more about the roster in general, seeing what guys can do, I really enjoy it. And I stay for the whole game every year just so I can see, what do these guys have, right? And I'm sure you're kind of the same way I am, and a lot of guys in the media are. And Saban will get a lot of questions this week, I'm sure. Tonight, you'll be there in a little bit. I'm sure he'll get a ton of questions about playing time, when's a guy going to get pulled, who's going to play this week. And I'm sure that'll piss him off from the jump. But Joe, don't be asking any stupid questions tonight.
Should I be the one? Coach, look, I know Deontay Lawson is a little hurt. Are we just going to give him the week off? Start Kendrick Blackshire in the middle, right, Coach? Start Blackshire and Campbell. Let Marshall and Lawson have the day off, right, Coach?
Yeah. Hey, Coach, how many snaps do you think Jalen Milroe is going to be on a snap count this weekend, Coach? How long you think he'll be in the game for? Yeah, give him that good one-liner, and we'll see what he responds to.
I might have my boss call and fire me right after the press conference ends. My big question, okay, I'm excited about that aspect. Yes, seeing the younger players. If you want to sell out Bryant-Denny Stadium this weekend, or if you wanted to jack the ratings up this weekend, then Coach needs to come out tonight and say, look, Milroe is out this week. Simpson's playing. Just play the twos. Every two is getting the start, and that's how you get every butt in the seat. Because I think the general Alabama fan does want to see the backups play. They want to see the safeties behind them. They want to see who's behind Malachi Moore. Jalen Keys had some injuries this year. They want to see kind of behind him if Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid's going to be moving on. Terry and Arnold probably is going to be moving on. So you're going to have a lot of there's lots of depth behind them. Give me Keanu Coate. Give me who's the other kid from Thompson, Jeremiah Alexander. Let those guys play in place of Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. You want to get all eyes and interest on this game. You just come out and tell us that. The number ones aren't playing, and I'll be there at 9 a.m. ready to play with a whole big write-up. But don't waste my time with 3.5 quarters of just joyless murder ball, and then let the guys come in there and get some snaps. That put them in there, put the twos in there when the game's still in the balance. Let them play some meaningful football. And sure, you are still kind of getting things together for the college football playoff committee, but make the experience valuable for the twos, in my opinion. Let's actually see the twos play some real football. Like you did the second to last drive against Kentucky. The twos were still playing with Ty Simpson. He was throwing the ball. Let's see some actual real football. That'd be the way to make me excited, Coach. So come out tonight at your press conference and say, look, we are getting ready for Auburn. Let's operate in truth. We're getting everybody healthy. We're going to play the twos this weekend. Sorry, UTC. We'll just see how it goes from there.
Yeah, let's just hope we don't get a Citadel situation like we did in 2018. I was at that game, and, man, I was like, what is going on? And even Tua was in and all that. But, yeah, I think – and you kind of mentioned it with Kool-Aid and Terry, and two guys that might be moving away. I want to see what Des Ricks has. I want to see what Antonio Kite has. I want to see Jalil Hurley. I want to see Earl Little II, And that's a position that in previous years, we don't really take those guys out of games, We don't really take safeties or corners out of games. We kind of tend to keep those guys in. But I'm interested because next season, Trey Amos in all likelihood is going to be coming back. Who's going to be across from Trey Amos? And Des Ricks, huge recruitment kind of guy. Had 5 stars written next to his name. I want to see what he's all about, right? I want to see what Jake Pope is about. He's a hard hitter in the spring game. I think he popped Kendrick Law in the spring game, and that got a lot of attention. So yeah, I want to see what he's about. I mean, I want to see some of these guys that have been buried under the defensive line. Anquan Barnes, we heard a lot of good things about him preseason, about his pass rush ability. Obviously, Braswell and Turner gonna be gone next year. Who's going to fill that void? Keon Keeley's been a guy of conversation.
It's a great chance
what
to
if we
see him.
Keon Keeley play? Yeah. So a lot of these guys we haven't seen play in these big situations, and getting them on the field in any type of game, getting them experience, obviously is a great thing for the future of Alabama. But for those guys as well, if they want to stay at Alabama, if they want to leave, that's just kind of what the new day of college football is. And I'm excited to go out and watch this game, like you said. So yeah, maybe we'll even see a Connor Talty appearance this weekend.
Hey, Connor, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, Will Riker, Be Still My Heart. Last game in Bryant-Denny Stadium for Will Riker. It's gonna be hard
here.
Yeah. Oh shoot, might you had 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It depends on how good or bad Connor Talty is in replacing him.
Yeah.
Last thing before we get you out of here, we've been talking to Sutton Smith, WVUA digital reporter for WVUA Sports. Been hanging out talking college football and basketball, Alabama specifically. What's kind of on your mind as we get into the weekend? Obviously, you've seen Georgia and Tennessee are playing really the only major SEC game. Michigan still kind of mired in scandal. We'll see how that plays out. Alabama, we hit on the cupcake matchup this weekend. Auburn is playing New Mexico State, I believe. So they are also taking a bite of the cupcake. So look, not really a huge weekend of college football, but what's on the Sutton Smith brain as the semester is coming to a close?
Well, I think it's obviously this upcoming weekend, like you said, not a great slate. And I am in the camp that I think Georgia is going to absolutely dominate Tennessee this weekend. I don't think Tennessee is going to stand much of a chance. It may be close at halftime, but this Georgia team is just much better than they are. And obviously Tennessee got absolutely shellacked last weekend against Missouri Road. I'm really looking at this Oregon State game versus Washington and Corvallis, Oregon. Oregon State is favored by 2.5 to beat Washington. A team, I think Oregon State can do it. I really do. And that's just one of the dominoes that could fall for Alabama. I think Alabama fans may need to be paying attention to that matchup this upcoming weekend, because once Washington loses, Alabama can start jumping up some spots, and maybe that's this weekend when they play Oregon State. But then another thing, obviously, we got great Tide Hoops schedule coming up. Very excited to see the Tide go against some major players in college basketball. So obviously got that on the horizon as well. But yeah, should be a great weekend for the Tide in football. Obviously, not expecting a ton of fans at Bryant-Denny Stadium, but that'll be okay. Obviously, and another thing to watch after this weekend: who participates in Senior Day? Who participates in Senior Day? Who decides to stay? I mean, there's a lot of guys who decide to stay. A couple guys who I think might. Seth McLaughlin, obviously, mixed feelings on that all season from him. But Malachi Moore, I think Malachi Moore may want to stay in college. So, this is a deep cornerback class coming up this upcoming year. Maybe Malachi stays, and I think a lot of Alabama fans would absolutely kill to have that. So he's played some great football this year for us.
Absolutely.
So pay attention to those seniors who line up on Saturday. See who we got out there.
Absolutely. Well, Sutton, this has been a blast for me. I appreciate you hanging out with us on a Wednesday. Make sure you go follow Sutton Smith at Sutton Smith 31 or 30. Did I say 31 or 33?
31.
I just had it written down earlier and I lost my notes. So Sutton Smith 31 on the X machine, and you can follow WVUA23 Sports for all his other coverage. Tell them about your podcast, and let's get out of here. Let's go hear Nick Saban at the Malmore Center.
Yeah, so I got the Just Saying College Football podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. We talk college football reviews and previews 2 times a week, usually for about an hour and 15 minutes. So, yeah, go find us there and go give us some support. But, man, Joe, I thank you for having me on, dude. Hopefully,
you got to get Julian on.
Yeah, maybe I can get Julian on. And that's funny. People will look up our podcast, and he'll be the one that pops up. So yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed being on here and talking some football and some hoops with you, man. I really enjoyed it. Hope to be back.
Absolutely. Let's do it again soon, man. That'd be great.
Maybe we can get you on the JS podcast.
That'd be great. Let me know.
All right. Sounds good.
Home and home. That'd be great.
Hey, there we go.
Yes, sir. That's Sutton Smith joining us on the Joe Gaither Show today, and I really appreciate him joining us. It's been great to make that connection here this football season. I appreciate really WVUA helping me make that connection with my little moonlighting time watching high school football. You can follow Sutton Smith at Sutton Smith 31 on the Twitter machine, tweeting all things Alabama football, Tuscaloosa area, West Alabama sports, and really follow his podcast at Just Saying on all the podcast platforms. Like I said, that's going to get us out of here for the day. We're hopefully going to catch up with a UTC reporter to give us a real actual analysis of the mocks tomorrow. Yes, I know I glazed over it today just because they are what they are. We're going to get out of here for the day. We're going to go hear from Nick Saban up in the Malmore, in the Naylorstone Media Room up at the Malmore Athletic Facility. You can always follow us at Joe Gaither 6 on all the social media machines. Maybe you can send someone over here to play this piano in the background. That'd be great. Send us your comments, questions, queries, and concerns. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon. And we'll get out of here for another day on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.